For those who are listening or watching this conversation, if you hope they just walk away with one thing, like what is your big one thing today for our listeners?
So I'll leave you with the very first words and the last words that I wrote in Personal and Authentic. The work is hard, but our kids are worth it. If I could rewrite that right now, I would say the work is ridiculously hard, but our kids are worth it. And at the very end, the challenge to the sending off challenge is to be bold, be fearless, be proud, and be you, because your story's not finished yet.
Welcome to TEPSA Talk, the podcast where leaders inspire, share, and grow together. TEPSA is dedicated to celebrating the incredible work happening in education. Each episode, we dive into meaningful conversations with leaders, change-makers, and innovators who are shaping the future of our schools. Whether you're looking for fresh ideas, encouragement, or a little spark to fuel your passion, TEPSA Talk is here for you. Imagine tuning in to hear how leaders are revolutionizing their schools, tackling challenges head-on, and fostering a culture of collaboration. Grab a coffee, hit play, and let's grow together. Welcome to TEPSA Talk.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TEPSA Talk podcast. I'm your host, Todd Nesloney, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled each week to bring you different thought leaders from around the world, and today we have one of my favorites, and that is Tom Murray. Tom, thank you so much for being on here today. Tell everybody who you are.
What's up, everyone? Hey, Todd, good to see you. Proud to call Todd here a good friend, and I've been connected for well over a decade, Todd, I'd say, right?
Right.
Just real quick. So I've been a teacher at all levels. I've been from elementary to secondary to even the graduate level. I've been a principal at elementary, a principal at secondary. I've worked at district office. I obviously couldn't keep a job, so now I work out of Washington, D.C., right? Like totally makes sense. And so now in my day job, I get to lead something called Future Ready Schools nationally, part of a nonprofit known as All for Ed. Love that work and just my day job, my full-time job with that. And then have the privilege and honor to speak around the country, write some books, and do a lot. I was actually in Texas yesterday working with one of your great ESCs and get to do a lot of that work as well. And so no matter where I go, Todd, I get to work with amazing people like you, like our principals and other district leaders across the nation.
I love it. Well, Tom, when I have these conversations with different guests on this podcast, I always like to kind of take it back to where it began for you. And so, our audience is going to be primarily principals, assistant principals, supervisors, things like that. At some point during your teaching career, you either decided that leadership was part of your path, or you were like, nope, somebody kind of pushed me into that, and then I just fell in love with it. What was your kind of journey to stepping out of the classroom and pursuing something a little bit different?
Yeah, I love that. And I love this actually for principals because it shows the influence of principals on folks. And so I had started teaching elementary school. I loved it there. A number of years later, I moved to the middle level. I was teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, loving what I was doing. I was working on my degrees. I finished my first master's. I finished my second master's. And so from a teaching scale end, I was at master's 30, loving life. Summers were good. Started teaching grad school, feeling like, all right, I'm enjoying, loving what I'm doing. And it was one principal. It was my head principal, Dr. Richard Zink. I'll give him a shout. Walked into my room one day and said, hey, Tom, I've got about 3 years left in this building before I retire. I'd love for you to be running it and leading it when I leave. Go finish that principal's degree. And I was close. He knew that I had a number of classes, had to do my internship. What I didn't know at the time was my assistant principal was going to be retiring about a year later, mid-year. He knew that. I didn't. And so I will tell you, I was loving what I was doing. I wasn't looking to leave the classroom. And so I thought, I thought to myself, well, I could probably finish the degree in the next 6 months to a year. I can figure this out. And if it's something that maybe I want to do, maybe I won't pass on the opportunity. So fast forward a little ways, and he says to me, listen, Jim's going to be retiring. I'm willing to make you a deal. If you want to be a teacher on special assignment for the second half of the year when he leaves, come on in, get a taste of admin and, kind of admin life. You can do some of the low-level discipline stuff, like super fun stuff, principals, right?
Yeah.
But get to see a little bit behind the scenes. You can finish your degree, and at the end of the year, when the position opens, if you like it, apply. If you don't, go back to teaching. And so I'm thinking to myself, hey, that's a pretty ideal scenario. If I don't like it, I can leave. And so I get into that, and it's you don't know what you don't know, right? And on one hand, I was fascinated because I felt like I was able to help influence some building-wide decisions and grow my circle of influence. On the other hand, I gained a true appreciation for the work of principals every day. And so to answer your question, I'll give a credit to a principal that saw something in me that maybe I didn't really see in myself at that point in time. And his push to do it kind of gave me the mindset of, well, maybe I could. And I think because he believed in me, it was somebody I respected dearly, a true mentor of mine. Because he believed in me, I felt like I could. And I think the lesson there and the connection for principals is, when we're leading the way in our offices and we see the greatness in our buildings, how do we empower other people? How do we build that leadership capacity in other people? What are the things we hold on to as principals because we love doing, but we know maybe that lead teacher, maybe that person on that core team, they're fully capable of it, but maybe they want to run their own building, or maybe they don't even know they want to run their own building down the road, and giving that experience there, abdicating some of that responsibility and giving them that experience, it builds their leadership, builds their capacity. And I'm super fortunate to have people have done that for me. So I've always felt the moral obligation to help do that with other people.
And I love that you share that, because to me, that's the most exciting thing of being a leader. I love working with kids. I love working with the families. But when you get to work with the teachers and help them see things in themselves they don't quite see yet, that's just, to me, that's always one of the most exciting parts of leading. And so I love that you shared your journey in that as well. Well, at some point though, you either you hear about this all for ed thing and this future ready thing. Like, when were you like, you know what? This whole Washington is where it's at. Now I'm gonna take this leap now, do a whole nother shift again. I did my campus, I did my district. Now I'm gonna go change it all up again.
Yeah, so fast forward another few years, I was a principal there at that building for a number of years. My elementary building, later on, I was an assistant principal, I should say, at that building. My superintendent calls me about a year and a half later, says, hey, we're going to have some movement in the district, the elementary position. And if you know my story, if anybody's read Personal and Authentic in the first chapter, there was a real tie emotionally for me for the building that I had been in when I taught. And she calls and says, listen, we're going to be moving things around. Somebody's retiring, somebody's leaving. We're going to be moving around. That building's going to be open. Your interview is going to essentially be, if you want it, it's going to be yours because you've proven that. So it's another person that opened another door. I serve at the elementary level for a number of years. Loved that. Loved my kids. Had been in every kindergartner's home and first and second graders home. Got to know my families really well. Knew every kid by name. Had no intention of leaving. And then after a June in service, our June admin staffing after the year had left, she walks in and says, I got a growth opportunity for you. And it was one of those of like, I'm just happy doing what I'm doing.
Right.
Offers me the position. I'm still like to move to district office where I would oversee technology and virtual programs at the time. We had just started our own virtual school back in 2009, 2010, somewhere in that range, and offers that position. Again, I was like, I'm not looking to leave. I love what I'm doing. The next day, she was a real bull in a china shop. And I say that out of love. I would say that if she was here because she knew what she wanted. And then it was, hey, I'll give you a couple days to think about it in that position. The next day I see her and she's like, have you thought about it yet? And I was like, I have, but you said a couple days. And she's like, I'm willing to make you a deal. I will not tell you no. If you can say, here's how it's good for kids and this is how it's in the budget. You can tell me those two things. I won't tell you no. And for the next 3 years, we kicked butt and we did innovative things and thought differently. She had my back. She was willing to let me push the limits. And so to answer your question, after moving to that, so the irony was I hadn't really applied for a position since I had been teaching. I mean, I had to go through a formal interview just to check the boxes in that sense. But it was people again. It was a different adult seeing something in me, seeing that opportunity. So then I was leading that alongside her. We get featured on the second National Digital Learning Day, it was this highlight of providing access to people, opportunities, kids that didn't have access at home. And it was in 2014. And my superintendent at the time applied to be one of those that was going to be recognized on Digital Learning Day out of Washington, D.C. I had no idea who All for Ed was. I hear about this. She comes down one day and she says, hey, me and you, we're going to D.C. We got this thing. We're going down to D.C. The Secretary of Education is going to be there and we're going to be highlighted. So you better bring a suit. We got to look good. I was like, yes, ma'am. Let's roll. Yep. And so like a couple of weeks later, we were on this, this national audience and Arnie Duncan's there and Chairman Wheeler from the FCC. And we're telling our story about how we were doing things differently because in 2014, so by the way, 6-7 years before the pandemic, we had been doing it for a number of years. We were teaching virtual classes by our own teachers to recruit back students that had left our districts to go to virtual cyber schools and charter schools in Pennsylvania. The way it's funded, you have to write the check for the full Scott, like the districts have to write the check. And so it was a huge financial piece. And she had the vision to say, I want to do it better. So we end up getting spotlighted on Digital Learning Day. The funny part was a number of months later, Governor Bob Wise, who is the former president of All for Ed, reaches out and says, hey, next year we're planning already for Digital Learning Day, and we're going to bring back Secretary Duncan and Chairman Wheeler from the FCC. And we wanted to know if you wanted to be on a panel next year. And I was like, I think you emailed the wrong person. Because one of these is not like the other.
Yeah.
And I literally was like, I don't think you meant to email me. And he's like, no, we did, because we want that district perspective. I was like, all right. So I go back down to DC the following year and, have another great conversations at the museum in DC and take the train down, big deal, and all excited. And a couple weeks after that, get the email saying like, hey, we're looking for somebody that could work with school and district leaders that could do all this stuff. And I'm thinking like, who do I know, right? I had no intentions of leaving. I loved what I was doing. And I'd end up taking the position to go to DC, working virtually out of Pennsylvania. And, again, the lesson there, I think, Todd, from a principal end is, again, reiterating, it was people that opened doors for me. And I will always go back to that. I will never stand on a stage and pat myself on the back and be like, here's everything I did. Because the reality is it's never been an I.
But I want to dive into this a little bit.
Yeah.
You're talking about the principals that believed in you, and that is such an important component to this. But at the same time, where I want to I dive into this a little bit more is the door was opened, but you had to choose to walk through that. And, there's probably leaders listening now thinking, I have an opportunity to do this, but I don't know. Like they recruited me or they offered it or I saw the posting online. Like, is that my moment to jump in? I'm caught by this fear or this insecurity. How did you keep from letting the insecure parts overwhelm you and believe that you were actually capable of doing that and let's go for it?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I'll say I even wrestle with that to this day, just being vulnerable and just from a humility end, even going down to being an author, right? Like my last 2 books were bestsellers and I'm starting to think about this, working on this third. And honestly, like still, even I could point and be like, yeah, last one sold so many copies. This is great. I don't think like that at all. I'm like, well, what if my third one stinks? Like, what if everybody's like, Tom, what happened? You fell off a cliff. That was great. And so I would say on one hand, it never really goes away. And I think people are always conscious of, I was doing this activity yesterday with leaders in the same sense of like, you always, for some reason, I think we all in our minds have that little voice that's like, you're not good enough. You're not qualified enough. And I don't know exactly what that is, but it's learning to like look back at that voice in your own mind and be like, watch me. I'm going to figure this out. Right. And I think one of the keys to that, one of the pieces of advice, because I love that question, it's so real. One is recognize that it's there and it's okay because you're human. And I think that's okay. It doesn't mean you're not qualified. It doesn't mean you shouldn't or you can't. It's that your brain is wired for safety, right? Your brain is wired for comfort. That's that survival instinct. And you're comfortable with what you know. And so to step out of our office or out of our building to a place that even it's, do I go to district office or not? Do I leave the public system over here? And for you, same thing, go to a nonprofit. But what if funding runs out? What if this runs? Yep. And those are good questions to ask. And I would say, if you're in that spot, number one, do your homework. Ask people, look into it, figure it out, do your homework. Because you don't want to just jump to the next hottest thing and then all of a sudden it's gone in 6 months. So you want to be really careful. Do your homework. Number two, ask the people that you love the most. Talk to the people in your world that you love the most. See what their gut instinct is, because they love you first and foremost for who you are, not the position that you hold. And ask them, and what's their gut instinct? How are they feeling about that? And those pieces, I think, are 2 pieces there. And then who's in your inner circle? Todd, you're somebody that I could pick up the phone, have a very real conversation of, and I know you'd shoot it to me straight and how you feel because we've got that trust and that connection. And so who are those people for you as principals that you can know, you can let your guard down, take the mask off that sometimes we've got to put on professionally and just be who you are and let them challenge. Why wouldn't I take this position? What's the worst case scenario about this position? Here's what I know for principals in that regard is I think we always have that where we're brought into this system being like, here's what you do. You become a principal. If you want to, you can go to district office, but you're going to do that for 30, 35 years. Then you're going to retire. Then you can go do your thing. And it's just not that way anymore. We know this system has changed on a whole. Get to work a lot with superintendents. And again, I was crediting my superintendent previously. The average superintendent right now is under 3 years, which means the average superintendent does not fulfill their first contract, which means there's a lot of turnover, which means there's a lot of opportunity. So part of me now says, and I can say this, I guess 25 years in that I would have struggled saying maybe 15 years ago, if you go for it and it ends up not working out at the end of the day, that's okay. because there's a lot of positions out there. There's a lot of people that need help. And you bring such incredible expertise. I will never recommend somebody leave education by any means. That's not my realm at all, because we need great leaders. But you bring such incredible expertise and leadership skills that there's places all over this world that would love to have you there. And so I think it's part of that's mindset, part of that's the people around you and connecting and having some really good conversations, but also part of it's believing in yourself to walk through the door when you and your family feels like it's going to be the right.
Well, and offshooting on that conversation, I think, a gift that you have that is not, I would say, of the norm of a lot of leaders is that you are very intentional in lifting up those around you and providing opportunities for them that they may not have had on their own. And it's never a competition thing. It's never, but if they get this because I mentioned their name, then I might not get this. Your heart is always one that it's like, yo, what do you need? Oh, I know this person. I know this person. Oh, I spoke your name in this room. I said your name in this email. And what I've learned is that those who are the most successful in this work that we do, this work with people, are leaders like that. Leaders who aren't worried about how they're going to get ahead, but instead are more worried about how the people around them are going to get ahead. Is that something that's always been an intentional part of your journey? Or is that something that you were like at some point that clicked that you were like, nope, this is who I want to be?
Yeah, I would say it's gotten stronger over time. For me, it's deeply rooted in my faith in calling on loving people. That's to me is like that's where it's deeply rooted, to be very honest. But the other piece is I recognize my own humility and in recognizing I promised years ago, as somebody that speaks a lot in a given year, I get to keynote maybe 80, 85 events a year. I will never stand on a stage ever and tell people how well I did something. Ever, but I'll stand on a stage and tell them how I screwed it up all day long. Why? Because to me, it shows like I'm human too. I'm not coming at this conversation having all the answers. And in fact, if somebody comes at you like that, you're in a you better run the other direction, right? What I've learned over time is it's kind of that notion of like what comes around goes around, because I know that when I amplify other voices, like here I am on your podcast, right? This is a Texas podcast, which is awesome, which wasn't my idea, wasn't my thought, but amplify other people and they'll do the same. And I don't mean to do it just because somebody will do something back. I don't mean it like that at all. I look at it as our kids need help. Our kids need the best that we have to offer. And collectively, we are so much stronger than we are dividing. We look at it from even a speaker world end, right? That notion of like, well, if I recommend that person, they're going to bring them in. They'll never bring me in. And I see that as so incredibly short-sighted. And there's absolutely so many, and that's where ego and all that stuff, pride gets into that very quickly, where I look at it as give those people a great experience, right? And make those connections, that relational side. When I wrote Personal Authentic, you'll see probably 100 voices throughout, because I recognize my lens of seeing the world is one way. Doesn't mean it's right. And I recognize that. It's how I've experienced it. It's my understanding, right? And if I have the opportunity to amplify voices, like one of the things I wrote about in Personal Authentic was the importance of just cultural relevance and seeing through it. But who am I to write that section, right? And so I reached out to a great friend of mine who's got a very different life experience and story, and said, hey, would you partner with me in this section so I can amplify your voice to really share it like it is, because you see the world differently than I do. And to her, it was quite an honor. And for me, it was like, that's somebody that can tell the story better than I can. Who am I to take that space? And so, anytime I'm partnering with events or conferences or even just working with leaders, it's recognizing if I'm the only voice they're hearing, that's a problem, because I'm not always going to be right, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm not going to know every situation. But collectively, when I can partner in with so many other people and give them so many other ideas of people to follow and connect with and read from and listen to, overall, they're going to be much stronger and much better. And for me, I think that humility piece, but amplifying voices, especially that need to be heard, that maybe aren't being in those spaces, is truly an opportunity.
I love it. Well, Tom, I could talk to you all day long, but as we wrap up this conversation today, I like to always end on the same question. And that is, for those who are listening or watching this conversation, if you hope they just walk away with one thing, like what is your big one thing today for our listeners?
So I'll leave you with the very first words and the last words that I wrote in Personal and Authentic. I wrote the words 2 months before the pandemic, that the work is hard, but our kids are worth it. If I could rewrite that right now, I would say the work is ridiculously hard, but our kids are worth it. And at the very end, the challenge to the sending off challenge is to be bold, be fearless, be proud, and be you. because your story's not finished yet.
I love that. Well, Tom, if people want to connect with you, how can they find you?
Check out Thomas C. Murray on Twitter, Thomas C. Murray EDU on Instagram, on Facebook, and those pieces. We'd love to stay connected. Reach out anytime. For all of you that are still listening these moments in, thank you for your work you do each day. I see you, love and care about y'all, and appreciate you. Keep leading the way.
Well, check him out on social media. Go to his website. Check out his book, Personal and Authentic. It's amazing. And make sure that you join us next week for another all-new guest. We'll see you all soon.